Hey there, winos. This is Vince.WINE. Today, I'm super excited to talk to you, winos, about port wine. What is port wine? How is it made? What's it taste like? What are all the styles? What do you pair it with? There's so much to know. I want to pop the bar top on port wines, as well as review a very popular port. That and more on today's Uncorked. Hey, thanks for joining me. Before we get started today, if you want to be a winoceros, hit subscribe on this channel to become a wino today. I'll put out new videos every single Saturday, so be sure to hit that bell icon to stay notified for more great wine content. Okay, so first let's go ahead and just jump into what even is port wine. Much like champagne, port wines actually cannot be called port unless they're from Portugal. And there are various different types of port as well. But for our purposes today, we'll focus on three types, which is white port, ruby port, and my personal favorite, tawny. Okay, now with all port types, you're talking about a sweet wine. It's going to be a wine that has intentional high amounts of residual sugar and also high amounts of alcohol. And the process starts the way any other wine would. Harvest, take the grapes, and barrel the grapes, but that's where the difference happens. Instead of allowing all of that fruit to become alcohol, port makers will stop the fermentation process when it's still at a really high sugar level there to capture all of that sweetness. Then they'll go back in and actually fortify the wine with harder alcohol. Most often it's actually brandy, which is a wine-based spirit. So now you've got high alcohol, high sugar, and that's going to leave you with a long lifespan of wine. Port wines can actually last for 100, if not hundreds of years. All that alcohol and sugar is going to preserve what's inside these bottles. So I'll pop open this white port. I kind of got into it already. So white port is made with a various number of varietals. Probably the most common one, or one that you winos might have actually heard of, is Malvasia. You might have heard of a white style wine called Malvasia Blanca. That's one of the more popular varietals that goes into white ports. Now these wines, I wouldn't say are overly complex. They tend to show a lot of citrusiness and sort of like rind and lemon peel, orange peel, that kind of thing, with maybe some nuttiness if you have like a reserve. This one is a 10-year white port, so it's not going to be that complex, but still a nice sweet treat. Oh yeah, I'm just getting really beautiful caramel in here, like caramel, a little bit of orange in there as well, and just hints of nuttiness in there as well. It actually kind of reminds me a little bit of a sherry in that way, but really a lovely wine, and obviously it's going to have this really deep, rich, look at that color. It's just this really amber, deep, like brownish gold in there. Really, really nice. Let's get it on the palate. Oh yeah, that's so rich, and it's actually very balanced. This is not a wine that is going to be way too sweet. I know a lot of people stay away from dessert wines and sweet wines, but port wines have a lot of complexity to them, so there is certainly sort of a creme brulee sort of finish here, but for the most part, this is really, really gentle and easy on the palate. I would love this actually with creme brulee or something sweet like that. Rule of thumb, by the way, you want your wine sweeter than the dessert you're eating it with, so port, such a great option for that. All port wines are going to be aged for at least 2 years, but there's a style of port that's released immediately, and that is ruby port. I'm pointing at this like it's a ruby. It's not. I just don't happen to have a ruby port on me. But ruby port is sort of meant to be enjoyed really youthful, and it tastes youthful. There's a lot of berry flavor in there, raspberries, and then maybe some secondary flavors in there like cinnamon and chocolate. But those are, in my opinion, the ones that are a little bit too sweet, and they're really not that complex either. They're very straightforward, and for that reason, they could be pretty nice entry ports. But if you want to stay away from the too sweet ports, and if you're looking for more complexity, ruby's not really, in my opinion, the way to go. Oh no, port is all about the tawny. So I have here Cockburn's 20-year-old Tawny Port. Oh, Tawny is my absolute #1 favorite port, and that's because Tawny's take so much lifetime. They take so many years to actually get to us. So take a look at this label here. It says 20-year-old Tawny Port. And what you have to know about that is that it doesn't actually mean that the wine in here was aged for 20 years before it got to me. In fact, this age identifier here actually talks about a flavor profile mostly. Now, don't get me wrong, legally there has to be 20-year-old barrels that were included in here. So you'll see typically 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, even 40-year age on ports, and those will include some barrels that were there that long, but this is a blend of vintages. It's not an entire vintage that was waiting for 40 years to get in bottled. So a barrel might be put aside and left there for 40 years and pulled from, then along with the younger vintages until they get to a certain flavor profile. That's how you get those age identifiers there. All right, Cockburns, let's see what you got.
What are you doing?
I'm just...
Oh my god, don't hurt yourself.
I'm just cutting the capsule.
If you wanted to show that.
Yeah, you like, sometimes you gotta get a little creative when you're popping bottles. Okay, so this one was a gift to me, and this is my first time actually popping the cork. Oh, by the way, ports tend to come with bar tops that look just like this here, and that's because they're meant to be resealable. They're gonna last you quite some time. Not open, they're gonna last you a really long time, like 30, 40, 50, even 100 years to some really high quality ports. And then once you pull the cork, they can last you about 2 weeks for the lower end stuff and up to a month for the higher end stuff. But honestly, I've enjoyed drinking ports even after something like 4 to 5 months. I know it probably isn't strictly something that you should follow. Don't take my exact advice for it. It's gonna vary by bottle, but I've held them for probably much longer than I should have and kind of still found them to be pretty drinkable. Okay, now Tawny Port is made from, oh my gosh. Huh, look at that color. Check that out. That is a good, now you want to talk amber. This is amber. This looks like in Jurassic Park, the little mosquito that gets caught in there. That is such a cool, it almost looks like a red ale, you know? It's just got these really deep, rusty red copper tones. I mean, this is really a gorgeous looking wine here. Where was I? Okay, so Tawny Ports are made from 5 varietals, for the most part, Touriga Nacional, Tinto Cal, Tinto Roriz, which is actually Tempranillo. I forgot the other ones. But a handful of varietals that are always used, and each varietal adds a uniqueness. Some adding more berry, some adding more chocolatey notes to the wine. Okay, with that, let's get it on the nose. Oh my gosh, so this starts super subtle. I mean, don't get me wrong, the nose is big, but it's not like a ruby port where it just gives you all that chocolate or all that fruit right away. This is super complex. There's a lot going on here, and I have to spend some time taking this apart. Oh man, there is this really beautiful, again, sort of that carameliness happening. There's a little bit of some kind of, not all the way to like mint leaf, maybe a little bit of like something herbal in there. Yeah, that creme brulee, a little coconut actually, some cinnamon on there too. There's a little bit of spiciness. Oh, some really pretty nuttiness in there as well, but not like oxidative. Yeah, and then a little bit of like dried orange peel in there too. This is actually really, really pretty. Let's get it on the palate. Okay, the body on this is almost like a really heavy red wine. Oh man, oh here comes that finish. Gosh, that was like an experience. This wine had a lot of evolution. It entered the palate really silky, almost like a red wine. It gave me sort of those immediate notes that I was getting on the nose, but man, that finish sort of started to melt onto my palate. And yeah, I'm getting a little bit more now of almost this drying sensation. So certainly this is a sweet wine, but there are some really pretty, almost like clovey kind of things happening in here. But this really is a very nice wine that I could just sip. Now the standard pouring for a port wine is about 3 ounces. So if you're ordering a wine from a restaurant, they're gonna give you about this much is gonna be right, maybe a little less than that. But I like to pour mine in a real wine glass because I can drink it like actual wine. The sweet levels and the alcohol levels don't really bother me that much. I really can just sip on this all day and night long. And besides having this as just a straight up sipper, you can actually enjoy port wines with smoky foods. It goes really well with, of course, other sweet foods, but smoky foods like smoked almonds or even sometimes barbecue would go really well with that if it's sort of a glazy, sort of smoky sweet thing happening. And it also goes well with astringent bitter food. So think like blue cheese, something really sort of like sharp like that. This is gonna cover that quite nicely. You're gonna have a pretty happy pairing there. So back to the bottle here. This says serve chilled and serve with friends. So mine is sort of room temperature here, but about 60 degrees is my recommendation when they say chilled. I really wouldn't put it cooler than that. I'm really enjoying it at the temperature it's at. Remember, wines start to lose their complexity as they get too cold, but you don't want it hot either. That'll just exacerbate the heat. So yeah, about 60 degrees and you're gonna be happy there. Oh, one thing I wanna talk about for sure is vintage ports. So you'll notice on this bottle of Cockburn that I have here, there isn't that 10-year-old, 20-year-old, and it also doesn't say ruby, and it also doesn't say tawny, it says Colleta there. And Colleta is actually another style of Tawny Port, but instead of a blend of barrels, this is actually single vintage. 100% of the fruit came from 2004, was put in barrels, and those barrels were aged and then bottled here. So those tend to produce some more aged characteristics. They can be a little dirty for me. They can be a little too intense sometimes, but you definitely want to have a palate that enjoys complexity. But if you're a port fan, I mean, you're going to be pretty happy. So my recommendation is if you are not a port person, it's not anything to really be afraid of. This is a huge difference between dessert wines. You know, some New World dessert wines can really be overbearingly sweet, but there is sort of a port out there, I believe, for everybody. Whether you want something really rustic like an old tawny or something sort of light and caramelly like our white port here, they're gonna be great food wines and they're just gonna be a lot of fun. Plus they're nice and warming. Perfect for the middle of winter or a late evening after dinner drink. If you enjoyed what you saw here today, please leave me a like. That helps so much. Don't forget to share this video with your wine friends. And until next time, winos, drink safe and drink well. Hey, thanks for joining me. Hey, thanks for joining me. I forgot what I say. Oh yeah, if you want to be a winoceros. Hey, thanks for joining me. If you want to be a winoceros, and if you want to be a winoceros. Oh, cool. I'll try it. Yeah, is it still recording?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining me. And if you, that doesn't sound right.
If you,
I forgot.
oh my god. If you want to be a wine, do you want to hear
Before we
one?
get started today, if you want it, that's what it is. Okay, ready? All right.